Hi, everyone. It's Nicole. I hope everything's going well. I wanted to share some really exciting news. Um, I just downloaded a new novel, brand new, hot off of like the brain here. And some of you follow me both either on my private wall or my author's page here on Facebook because you're not my friend in real life, but you read my stuff. And I wanted to take the time to share with you a little bit about my writer's process and give you a little inside scoop into how this happened, how I was able to, what does it mean to download a new novel? This is super exciting. I have not had a novel come to me to be written since um, 2022. As a matter of fact, this novel originally came to me in on July 22nd, 2022, but a little more on that in a moment. Regardless, I want to share with you how this happened, my process for accepting and what I call downloading or channeling a new story, and then where it goes from here. Just a little insight into the creative process. I do have a YouTube channel where a few years ago I actually was with a narrator for the woman who narrated, Bea Romano, the Song of the King's Heart trilogy, my ancient Egyptian novels. She narrated them for audiobook, and we give you a little sneak peek onto how an author and a narrator work together. But this is just how does Nicole write a book? Now, again, this is me. Not all people write their books the same way, but there are a couple things, but I do it the same way. This is what happens. And what it starts with is a set of characters that, or one or two characters that come to me that want their story to be told. And in this case, a character named Justice. The working title is Justice. Justice Sloan came to me in July 22nd, 2022. At that moment in time, I had just finished editing Wildfire. It was in being edited, it was finished written, it was getting ready to be published in that October of 2022. I had published It Takes Two in February of 2022. So this is in between. This is also the moment where we were done living in rentals after our wildfire experience. We'd moved out of our rental back to the land in Bonnie Doon, and we had our trailers, and my husband and my eldest son, Jack, and I were living there. But we were preparing to come to Chicago, and I was about to bring my husband and my eldest son back to Chicago for the first time. They had not seen the house. And this was the first time since we'd moved to California in 2007. And I think that's super significant. And a day came, and this couple, Justice, and then the female's name is Grace, they came. I had locked myself in my younger son's tiny house since he wasn't there, and I wrote 5 chapters, and that's what what the timestamp said. I wrote 5 chapters, and then I closed my laptop, and I did not look at them again until this September. Now, this is a story about Chicago. This is a love story that is set in Chicago, and it was that even then in July of that year, it was going to be about Chicago. And so I was about to bring my husband, the love of my life, back to Chicago where our love story had started. Um, and so that's not, that was the sort of initial go for it. But I have not had a chance to look at it since, partially because my husband has since retired and he's always around. And it's, anyone who loves a writer or an artist that isn't a public sort of artist like actresses and dancers. They're out in front of everybody, and they don't need their privacy quite the same way. But when you're a writer or poet or painter, I think, or sculptor, all of those kinds of things, being alone is really important when you are downloading, when you are taking nothing and making something. And when you live with others, they come in and interrupt you. So I always wrote when my children were at school, my husband was at school. Well, now my husband is always home, so I haven't had a chance. Okay. So in September, my husband made plans to go to California, and I did not go with him this time. I wanted to stay in Chicago. This is where I want to be. So he went, and I was going to have 3 weeks. And so in September, I thought, I wonder about that story about the love story from Chicago, about Chicago. I wonder if it would like to come to me. And so what I usually do This is where I was going to go. It's like, okay, these characters came to me a while ago, and then I tabled them. I wonder if they'll tell me their story now. So I usually do a different form of art to open myself up to the story that wants to be told through me. And it's been dance, for example. I was a dance teacher, and once I choreographed a musical, and right after that experience, I downloaded a novel. I often use knitting. I'll knit something, a new project, and it just sort of opens, I don't know, my brain waves, and then I receive a story. This time I was using collage. It's a new art form for me, and I started doing collage work, which I will be sharing on my wall and on my website here over the next couple weeks. Just posting pictures of that art without much description because I just want to share the images. But I was honoring all of the characters from my novels that have already been published. There are 7 novels that I have published, 2 trilogies and a standalone romance. And I explored the main characters from each one through collage. And I wondered, am I going to get a chance to write or not? But I wanted to take advantage of the 3 weeks that Walt was gone. He left on October 15th. I opened up the files from July 22nd, 2022. I opened those up on October 19th. Last night, I finished 80,000 words, 280 Microsoft pages. It's about standard for a standalone novel in the romance genre. They're usually between 60 and 80,000 words. So it came. Now, where will and so what happened? I've had the house to myself. I've had to leave, like to walk the dog, work. I had a bunch of appointments I'd planned while my husband was gone, just in case I didn't get a novel and I didn't want to be lonely. But mostly when I've been here, all I've been doing is writing. I haven't been sleeping. That's why my throat sounds this way. I haven't really been eating. I've dedicated all my time to this. And it has been awesome. And it's a high and it's a thrill. So where do I go from near now? From here? I'm just going to hold it, love it, thank these characters, live in the bliss of doing this. This is really exciting every time it happens. It's different each time, but I'm going to hang out for a while. I will probably do some collage of these characters to get to know them a little better. And then I go into the editing. The first time, my first read through, that's why I always print the first one out. I know it's a waste of paper, but I always print it out. As a matter of fact, the only one of these I have is It Takes Two because, well, I have a couple others actually. I've written since then, but anyway, I have this printed out, and that's how I do the first read through. And I will mark it up with my pen because some things are obvious, but mostly it's to see what I did, to see if it flows. Then there will be the tightening. I talk too much, like you know that about me. So all my dialogue needs to be tightened. The head scenes, the inner monologues need to be tightened or go away. Show, don't tell. That's like, he said angrily. Okay, every adverb, because adverbs are out now, thanks to Elmore Leonard and Stephen King. You're not allowed to use any adverbs. So, but that's okay. You search on ly and you get all these things and you start changing it. Like, if he said something in anger, what does he look like when he is angry? If she is trembling, you think about it, tremble can be, you can tremble when you have sex, you can tremble when you're scared, you can tremble when you're very, very happy, you can tremble when it's 20 degrees below zero in Chicago, right? And this is a story in Chicago. So cleaning that up. What's missing? Does it all make sense? Does it flow? And then the real editors will come in. I'll either be going back to my publisher, at which point she's the acquisitions editor, or I'll be self-publishing myself. That is a decision I have not made yet. If I go with my publisher, they pay for the editing. If I go with myself, I pay for the editing, but I also have more control and I can get it out sooner. I haven't decided. Regardless, the first one is your content editor. That's usually your acquisitions editor if you are working with a publisher. And that second set of eyes that's looking at it and saying, does this make sense? Like to you, the story makes sense, but does it really make sense? And what might be missing? I'll give you one quick example in the Song of the King's Heart trilogy that I wrote. The main character, the king of Egypt, finds out that his beloved has died. And I originally wrote that, just stubbed it in. because I didn't have what it took to write it. And it would be years. And then I had to write something and gave it to the acquisitions editor. And I even put it in the point of view of another person in the room because I didn't have what it took to feel his pain. And that editor was like, Nicole, he's finding out that he's lost the love of his life. You spent 2.5 books getting us to fall in love with this couple. You can't, you can't give us this crappy scene, right? So that's what you need an acquisitions editor for. I rewrote the thing. I drank a bottle of wine. I allowed myself to feel badly, and there it was. So that'll happen, and then a copy editor. So that's where that's going. And I will definitely be sharing updates. We won't, like I said, this is at least a year out. This is for no one's eyes but mine right now, but I just had to share with you. I'll be sharing updates on my website. If you haven't signed up yet, it's www dot Nicole Salick Anderson, NicoleSalak.com. You sign up for my newsletter. I will send monthly newsletters, and you can find out how it's going. So that is the process. This is about 10 minutes. And if that's all the time you have, then this is a great time to say goodbye. If you are willing to hang out for a little bit longer, I would love to share with you what the novel is about. I just personally don't like videos over 10 minutes, but I also don't want to do two videos. So, what is this novel about and why did I write it? Well, I wrote it because these characters wanted it to be written. I'll be honest. I'm not a writer who gets to pick and choose what comes through me. Um, but I got to choose the setting and I got to choose where I wanted to put it in time. And I wanted to share that with you because in writing it, I've learned some things, and I think they're worth letting you know. So this is a story. Its working title is Justice. It is about a couple, Justice and Grace. This is a story about the one who got away. Now, and it's also a story about the one who you deserve. And those are not mutually exclusive. Often the one who got away is not the one that you deserve, is not the one who you were going to write the rest of your story with. That's why they got away. However, they're never fully away. That experience of young love, unless you married your high school sweetheart, and I know a couple of you, and good on you, that's super sweet, right? That's why it's called the high school sweetheart. Most people in their 20s, in college or their early adulthood, or both, will have an experience of love that profoundly affects them. It teaches them, it shapes them, and there's often a wound because we're awkward at 20. And for a couple of reasons, you're young, you don't know that much, and you're about to launch your life. And so there's a lot that goes on there, and young adults hurt each other. And you go forward, and everybody thinks they get over it, maybe, and there are various levels of it. But really, this is a love story about how those sorts of things they're always with you. And what does it mean to have that with you? And exploring that. Justice and Grace. This is a love story also about Chicago because I love Chicago. And Chicago is a big part of my life and my own love story. And then lastly, I chose to put it in the 90s because it's a love story to the 90s. So that is one thing. The 90s, in my opinion, as my new friend Julie recently put it, is the Pax Romana of this cycle of America. Now, and let's just table that for a second because I chose the 90s because I wanted to write a love story to the 90s because I think it's the last time, like that was the greatness of this round and that things have kind of been going downhill ever since then for America. So that meant I was going to set these people in the 90s. And so just a quick note for all of you who knew me in the 90s. You went to Purdue with me, or you knew me in Chicago in those early days. Some of this story will feel familiar to you. Number one, because there are places that we've been, like in Chicago, the Excalibur, in at Purdue, Harry's, right? Harry's Chocolate Shop, right? There are things that will seem familiar to you. But in terms of the main characters, this is not an autobiographical thing. However, all fiction is autobiographical. We lean on things as writers in order to bring up emotions and situations and also fill in information. So you may think that there will be parts of Justice and Grace's story that are familiar to you. You may think that Justice is a specific person in my life, the one who got away from me, the young man who broke my heart, right? And in some ways he is, because again, I had to draw on that to bring this out, but he's not. Justice is every bad guy that you met at Purdue, that we met. And since then, rolled into one, and he deserves compassion and redemption. Grace is, you're going to think is me. Some of you will think that because I made her a computer science major. The reason I did that is because you should know, write what you know. And I wanted it to be at Purdue because I wanted to write what I knew. And I figured she had to have my major because I don't really know that much about the rest of Purdue. But she goes to the buildings that I studied in. Um, she knows the professors I knew, right? And I also know what it's like to be a young woman in the 90s launching a career in tech in Chicago. And so I wanted that because that is key to Grace's story. And that would be the one thing that is key to my story. The one thing that's autobiographical would be that majoring in software engineering and coming to Chicago and dealing, and how that would affect that first relationship. Other than that, it's not autobiographical, but you'll probably still enjoy it because you're going to recognize these places. And the other characters are that way too. The main good guy, uh, the guy that's in the friend zone too long, but then comes out of the friend zone and saves the day. He's every good guy you've ever met. And then there's every bad girl you've ever met in the that's just how that works. But Grace and Justice are their own characters and their own stories. I just have used some things from my lifetime to color in the edges. Now, this is, like I said, about the person who got away and about, Chicago in general and how much I love Chicago. And then the 90s. The 90s was a point in the story of America. We've gone through a couple of these. This is based on the fourth turning, but there are these phases. They're like 80 to 100 years long in total. And they're the building phase or rebuilding because the next phase always comes after chaos. There's the rebuilding, and then there's the awakening, and then there's the unraveling, and then there's chaos. And we are currently in a chaos cycle that started with rebuilding or greatness right after World War II. And to me, the 90s were the pinnacle of that. And I think on all sorts of economic measures and quality of life measures, the beauty of that culture, the storytelling, the music, the infrastructure, the amount of money that people were making. But just like in a brief nutshell, you have your 1940s and 50s, those forefathers of ours, that generation, the greatest generation, built an amazing country. They gave us interstate travel, airplanes, electricity, what the whole WPA project. Currency, money, it was amazing what they did. And then in the 60s, their children rebelled, like in the summer of 69, like, hey, we hate you and we hate your war. We're going to stick it to the man. And they blew some things up. They had sex with everyone. They did drugs. That would be called the awakening. Those are the boomers when they were young. And they stuck it to the man long enough to usher in the 90s. They threw all that away and became Gordon Gekko on Wall Street and became the wealthiest generation to ever exist, the boomers. They hate this part of their biography. They ignored their children for the most part. That would be my generation. That's why we were so feral. But that's but then in the 90s, you would say that is the unraveling because what had been set up in the 40s and the 50s by the previous generations had reached its top, its peak. It's amazing. And it birthed the internet and the smartphone. That would be like the pinnacle. And me, got to grow up in the 90s, got to turn of age, come of age in the 90s. And I am so grateful. We told great stories. We had great music. We had great fashion. I still actually dress the same way. Um, your black leather biker jacket and your Doc Martens, or your blazer and your jeans and your cute little short boots. Anyway, we had great music. We had great movies, great books. The professors of that time were the ones that wrote the books were still studying. The greats were there, right? And we got to come of age of it. And I really wanted these people. I wanted this story to be there. So going back to the 90s and being a part of the 90s has been really, really great. And this is definitely, I hope, something that will come out. My love of the 90s and what an honor it was to be 20 something in that time because it's much easier than it is for the kids now. And going to that macro situation there, um, we we began to the chaos is what they call us now. Everything's breaking down. Various experts will give a different date, but a lot of people say 2008 because of the crash, but I would say it's 2007 when the smartphone phone came out. Um, we just no longer, as a result of that invention, have the attention span to build things like the smartphone or the internet or the highway system or even to fix our infrastructure. And that's really sad, but I've already lectured on that for a million times. This is an ode to the 90s. It's also a love story to Chicago, like I said. And that's what I want to leave you on because it's already gone a little long, but I want to talk about that macro story that keeps repeating itself because after everything falls apart now, something new will be created. Always does. Who knows what we're going to create next in America? We will. But in our micro, in our little world, that's us, our bodies, we too go through those cycles. And so you would say that our 20s is kind of our awakening. And then our 50s and 60s can kind of be our chaos, right? Like things begin to break down. Um, and I don't really mean physically. What goes around comes around. So the wounds that you are carrying will pop up again. And this became very evident with me because as I approached 50, my house burned down. Now, back up in my 20s, I did meet a young man who I loved and who was not going to be a part of my life. And I got so lucky because I got my happily ever after just a little bit later in 1996 with Walt Anderson. So I was a young woman. I was 24 when I met Walt. He has been my everything ever since. There's been no one since, and he's the father of my children and all of those things. But before that, he and I each had a relationship, and you bring that into the relationship that you're happily ever after. You just do. But you also bring it in and going on with your life. So a major reason that first relationship and it became very evident in writing this love story of Chicago is how much I love Chicago. I loved the city. It never dawned on me that I would ever live anywhere else. So in college, I applied for an internship in Chicago. Thank you, Dan Naylor, for hiring me, if you're listening to this. Um, After college, I, of course, came here. In between there, I met someone whose life was not in Chicago. His life was never going to be in Chicago. The things he was building were in another place. And I didn't want to go to that place. So I never opened my heart the way it could have been opened. And perhaps the same him the other way. He maybe never, why would he want to be in Chicago? But definitely my love of Chicago, I put a wall up. And then when we tried again in our young adulthood, I still picked Chicago over him. Now that's okay, because that was not my path. My path was not him. My path was Walt Anderson. But if you go forward, I'm in my 30s, and that love, my husband, the father of my children, now wants to leave Chicago. He wants to try something new. And we have established our careers, and I am in a place to support him. And so we go and do the great California adventure, and I would never have changed it. Do I have some regrets? Mostly and when it has to do with raising children in California versus having not done that to them. It was quite a shock for them to move at a young age away from their grandparents. And, there's that. So those are their wounds that were inflicted by our choice. But in terms of the story of Nicole, that was a good one going to California. And it was a good run until it wasn't. And when my house burnt down, something in hindsight now that I can see, looking at all of us, right? 900 houses were lost. I met many, many friends. We all recovered and moved on differently. And the reason it was so different is because when new trauma comes, it opens up old wounds. wounds that you didn't realize that you hadn't healed. And so we all have different wounds. And so we all go through new tragedy differently. And in my case, I had a wound that I didn't realize I had right away. And I go through it in my memoir. It took a while to realize my wound was I missed Chicago and I wanted to go home. And my sweet husband agreed. And we split our life between these two places. And so, on basically the eve of bringing my husband back to Chicago, this couple tried to come to me, this love story about Chicago. And I accepted that little bit, wrote 5 chapters, tabled it. And now later, with a chance, some time alone, it came back. But when I realized yesterday when I was done writing it, that the wound of leaving Chicago, I never stopped missing this place. I have to be aware that my love for Chicago doesn't make me put up a wall between my husband now because he still loves California. And we have to find that compromise, right? I will go there so that he can be there. And then he comes here so I can be here. And we're blessed to be able to do it. And the fire is what has enabled this. But there's also this tendency for me to be like, no, I got to have my way, or, to to not notice that the other has needs that way too. So to keep that in balance, that, you know, that back when I was young, there was a person that I never really got to know because I couldn't see him here with me. And again, that's fine. But now, and in writing this book, Grace going through that decision herself, it's making me realize I don't want to do that in the now. With this man I love, my happily ever after, he is still got unfinished business in California. And I have to make sure that I do both because I want both. And that's what marriage is. It's a give and take. That's what love is. That's what love in your 50s is versus love in your 20s. So wherever you're at in your life, I hope you're doing well. And I hope you see how, that awareness that we can take in hindsight is a gift. And your art and your creativity often help you see those gifts. But this has gone on long enough. So thank you for sticking around till the end. And if you want to know how things go with this novel and as it comes out, sign up at my website because that's where I am most of the time now.